here for. We ask that we do so knowing our obligation to the people whom we serve. We ask that all that we do will be done to your honor and glory, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Member Campbell. Do we have any apologies for absence? No apologies. No apologies. All right, members, welcome back. Just for the record, we had the meeting of 2 weeks ago we were to meet with the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Industry and Commerce. We were told at that time that the Wednesday there was a prearranged meeting with the Prime Minister and the members of the ministry. When we had set the meeting for the following Wednesday, we heard that the ministry had a retreat. So it was determined that the last 2 weeks we were unable to meet. In the interim, in Parliament, a decision was taken in discussion with members that, given the concerns about the procurement of motor vehicles by the Ministry of National Security, that we would ask the ministry to send a report. That report is here. So today we will have both the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, but prior to that we would take the review of the report from the Ministry of National Security on the procurement of motor vehicles for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Just some housekeeping, 2 things. One, we are now at the end of November. We have the Ministry of Agriculture before us. I'd like to find out from members if it is intended, when it is intended for us to go on recess. Member Paulwell could guide us in that regard.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to inquire, in light of what you've just said, when do we expect to have the supplementary estimate, the first supplementary estimates tabled, so that we can contemplate that as well?
Well, we had heard that it was to have been tabled last week. We have heard nothing. I've not heard if it is to be tabled today. My suggestion to the members is that whenever we have terminated our deliberations with the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Industry and Commerce, once we have finished that we would recess, whether it is whenever we finish that. However, that as soon as the supplementary is tabled, that we would take it. Last year, we were told in the last week of November that it would be tabled the first week of December, and we had made preparations, and then it was postponed to the second or third week of January. I suspect it may be the same this year.
Mr. Chairman, I fully understand. I just believe that the government has to schedule its process much more timely. I'm concerned that we have not been alerted, because it is time now for the government to be dealing with supplementary estimates. They're going to be running out of resources soon if that is not done. So probably through the clerk we could inquire formally, and that will enable us to schedule our work.
Yes, whether or not we could inquire whether the supplementary is going to be tabled this year, so that we can appropriately inform members. Okay. With that, the minutes of the meeting of November 8th were circulated. If there are any corrections, if there are no corrections, I would ask someone to move for confirmation of the minutes. Member Paulwell, seconded by Member Campbell. Thank you. Okay, with that, we would invite members. I intend to just invite everybody that's here, if both ministries are. If not, what time it all? Industry to come 11. Oh, good. All right, we would invite the Minister of National Security to come.
I thought you would need at least 1 hour with these people.
At least.
Ignore this.
Helps.
These are the people.
All right, Dan McIntosh. Luke McIntosh, no relation. Nicola Wittick. Milton Morrison. Morning, Pierce. How are you today? All right, Pierce. We had asked you to come today from the Ministry of National Security for us to deal with one specific item. What I would do is just start by asking you to introduce your team, and then I'd like to read the update into the records, and then I would allow yourself and the members to discuss the matter. So if you could introduce your team.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning again, everyone, members. With me this morning, I have Mr. Milton Morrison, who is the Director of Procurement, Ms. Nicole Wittick, who is the Director of Management Accounts.
Could you just
indicate
yes, so could they indicate so that
okay, so as I call in him, just
yes,
so Mr. Morrison is on my right, Director of Procurement, Ms. Wittick, Director of Management Accounts, Ms. Angela Patterson, who is Director of Corporate and Special Services with the JCF, Ms. Paula Wadsworth, who is my Senior Legal Officer, and Mr. Luke McIntosh, who is the Principal Finance Officer for the Ministry of National Security. And I'm the Permanent Secretary, Diane McIntosh.
All right, thank you, Ms. McIntosh. All right, members, the Ministry of National Security was invited because there were grave concerns amongst members. It was reflected in a discussion in the House, I think 2-3 weeks ago, about the motor vehicles, procurement of motor vehicles for the Ministry of National Security and for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. As we all know, part of this crime fighting strategy, the issue we're facing is the immobility, the fact that our police force does not have sufficient motor vehicles, and that it was intended to get motor vehicles for them. And in the budget, the 2016-17 budget, 2016-17, which would have been last year's budget, provision was made for the procurement of motor vehicles. In January of this year, we invited, during the supplementary discussion, the discussion on the supplementary estimates, the Financial Secretary had given us a commitment that the funds had been in place and the ministry had all that was required, and that they had expected the motor vehicles to be there by the end of the financial year. that would have been the end of March of this current year. That was the expectation of this committee as recorded in our report last year. However, during the course of the end of the last financial year and this financial year, there have been issues and the contract has not been fulfilled. So the ministry has now given us a report, and I'd like to read the report into the records. It says, update, contract awarded to O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited for the supply of 200 pre-owned motor vehicles to the Ministry of National Security for use by the Jamaica Constabulary Force. On January the 25th, 2017, the Ministry of National Security awarded a contract to O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited in the sum of $426,930,400 for the supply of 200 pre-owned motor vehicles. It's comprised of 80 Toyota Corolla Axios and 120 Toyota double cab pickups for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. This was done through local competitive bidding, where the procurement opportunity was publicly advertised and a submission made to the National Contracts Commission for the endorsement of award of contract. The recommendation was also approved by Cabinet. A 50% deposit in the amount of $213,465,200 was paid to the supplier. An advance payment guarantee was received from the supplier in the amount as the deposit paid, thereby securing the government's interest. A performance security of approximately $43 million was also requested and received from the supplier. The delivery period of 90 days for the vehicles expired in June the 5th, 2017, and only 30 vehicles have been delivered to date. In this regard, a letter dated June 14, 2017 was sent to the supplier regarding the matter. In response, the supplier, in a letter dated July 5, 2017, highlighted the following challenges and requested a 90-day extension with effect from June the 6th for the delivery of the remaining vehicles. 1, sourcing the vehicles consistent with agreed specifications for approved suppliers. 2, shipping and customs clearance delays. And 3, difficulty in the acquisition of waivers for general consumption tax and special consumption tax being charged on the vehicles. The 90-day extension was granted by the ministry with effect from June the 6th, 2017 to September the 4th, 2017. In a letter dated August the 25th, 2017, O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rentals Limited wrote to the ministry requesting that the general consumption tax and the special consumption tax being charged by the Jamaica Customs Agency on 50 motor cars and 26 pickups be paid by the ministry, as they were unable to absorb these costs. In an internal meeting subsequent to this, the decision was taken that the ministry would not bear these costs, as it is the obligation of the contractor to pay the relevant duties and taxes associated with the clearance of the vehicles as per the contract. Notwithstanding, the decision was taken that the final attempt will be made by the ministry to assist the process by requesting a waiver from the Ministry of Finance and Public Service for the taxes to be waived, and that the contractor should provide the following to facilitate the process. 1, an extension of the advance payment guarantee with effect from September the 26th, 2017 to December 25th, 2017. And 2, an invoice with the description of the vehicles, cost, engine numbers, chassis numbers, and the amount for the GCT and SCT taxes. Upon receipt of the above-mentioned documents, the Ministry of National Security wrote a letter to the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service on October the 27th, 2017, requesting that the taxes on the vehicles be waived. On November the 2nd, 2017, The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service advised that the request was not supported. The ministry subsequently wrote to O'Brien's International Car Sales and Rental Limited, advising them of the situation and demanded that the vehicles be delivered no later than November the 24th, 2017, and that failing to meet this deadline will result in the ministry taking the necessary actions in keeping with the terms of the contract. Permanent Secretary, that's the report as stated. I think the first question we would ask, if the vehicles have not been delivered on November the 24th, has the ministry started to take the necessary actions with regard to these, to O'Brien's?
Well, we were about to invoke. Then we heard that a moratorium was granted by Customs after discussions between Ministry of Finance and Customs for the clearing of the vehicles. So I understand that Mr. O'Brien's International Car Sales is now clearing the vehicles as we speak.
What do you mean by a moratorium?
Would you like to?
Because if a contract has gone out and the terms of the contract are such, and there's any form of waiver or anything that would allow, or a moratorium which would now allow them favorable treatment with regard to persons who previously had tendered, that could not be a correct action by government.
Good morning, everyone. Minister, the Ministry of Finance does not consider to be favorable treatment. They are of the view that the ministry...
Your microphone, please. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Is it on?
Okay. Yes, the Ministry of Finance is of the view that the Ministry of National Security ought to pay the GCT and SCT on the vehicles, and that it's a requirement by law.
Was that a part, who was supposed to pay it under the contract?
Under the contract, it would have been charged to the ministry on the invoices by the supplier and paid by the ministry. Unfortunately, the supplier inadvertently left these taxes out of his final cost.
No, what do you mean inadvertently left? He put a bid forward. He put a bid forward.
Right.
His bid would have been lower than other bids, obviously, if he left it off inadvertently.
Yeah,
but if you have a contract, how do you alter the contract at this point? Because then his contract would be probably in keeping or higher or the same amount as others who had bid at the same time.
Well, at the time of the award, his bid was the lowest. The fact that we're now contemplating payment of the SCT and GCT, will look to see whether, if added to his final cost, whether that would put him at an advantage at the time when the contract was awarded. And after adding those taxes, he still remained the lowest bidder.
I'm going to remember, but I'm just saying to you, are you saying to me that the contract that you had with O'Brien's did not specifically state, the contract on which he won the tender did not state that that the ministry would be paying for the GCT and SCT?
The contract required that bidders submit a final cost to the ministry, and it was on those costs that an award was made. A contractor was selected and an award was made. So
I'm saying, in the original contract that was signed, the contract did not have the ministry paying GCT and SCT?
The contract did not state that.
So on what
It didn't state
basis?
it explicit.
No, not explicitly that the ministry would be paying.
It is in the final, right? Legal.
Chair, so as a chief procurement officer, that's your position.
Yes.
There's some dereliction of responsibility or duty right there, because in their report, Chair, that came from your ministry, speaking about the request that came from O'Brien's, which was turned down by your ministry.
Yes.
What this would say to me is that the contract has just been altered as we go along.
No, but that is what we're saying.
We use the standard GOJ contract for this procurement. In clause 16, it speaks of taxes and duties. If you'll allow me to go through.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
For goods manufactured outside the procuring entity's country, the supplier shall be entirely responsible for all taxes, stamp duties, license fees, and other such levies imposed outside the procuring entity's country. In 16.2, it states, for goods manufactured within the procuring entity's country, the supplier shall be entirely responsible for all taxes, duties, license fees, etc., incurred until delivery of the contracted goods to the procuring entity. And in 16.3, it states that if any tax exemptions, reductions, allowances, or privileges may be available to the supplier in the procuring entity's country, the procuring entity shall use its best efforts to enable the supplier to benefit from any such tax savings to the maximum allowable extent. It is from this that we had decided that it was really the contractors, the supplier's obligation to pay the taxes.
Yes.
And on that basis, that's how we had proceeded. We have now been informed or advised that we...
By whom?
The Ministry of Finance.
And the reason
that
why...
we can in fact pay the GCT and seek to recoup.
No, but you see, again, I keep on... When we have situations like this, the other suppliers, I can guarantee, would not have gotten the same treatment. And that's why I said we are altering this as we move along, which is not correct, right? Because by your response in this, when the request was made to the Ministry of National Security, it was denied. You said here that you are sending it to the Ministry of Finance. Yeah? Now, to come and say that, because there was one other company that had shown interest, isn't it? It was two companies.
About 6 or 7 in total, but in the end we had about 3 companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
That submitted bids.
And these, because they were the cheapest, you gave it to O'Brien Car Sales. Huh?
Well, the decision was made by the National Contracts Commission. What we did was to recommend.
In this, you said you did your own due diligence and then you forwarded it to the National Contracts Commission.
Right.
Your own words.
Yes.
In this report.
Meaning we evaluated and we presented
Exactly.
a minimum
So
of 2 suppliers.
Contracts Commission awarded it on your recommendation.
Based on the process that we were obliged to go through.
Right. So the selection was actually done by the Ministry of National Security and sent on to National Contracts Commission to ensure that the company is NCC and TCC compliant and all of that. Yeah?
And then the submission was done to Cabinet, so it went through all those processes,
yes.
right?
Fine. But to have a contract where $213 million was paid as a deposit from earlier this year, from what, January of this year. 30 vehicles supplied out of that, right? The company was given 90 days to supply these vehicles. The company within that period, coming down to the end of the 90-day period, wrote to the ministry saying that they have a problem in clearing these vehicles. Yeah? First question I would ask you, what is the value of those 30 vehicles that was supplied? Turn on the mic for me, please.
The unit cost is about $1.3 million. So I would have to do the calculation to get the exact figure.
Maybe 40,
about
maybe
40,
50 million.
Right.
50 million, yeah, maximum 50 million out of.
I think it was about 46 to be exact.
46
yeah, I remember now.
All right.
Yes.
Then the companies came to the Ministry of National Security after delivering these 30 vehicles, requesting a waiver, which was not in the original. You're saying that that was probably inadvertently left out of their estimate.
Yes.
Eh?
Yes.
So
no, that's what they have reported to us.
no, that's what they said to you,
Yes.
right? But the price that you got from them is supposed to be the final price,
Exactly.
inclusive of.
Exactly. Right. The GCT
Now,
and SCT.
if my memory serves me well, because, so is it that the ministry now will be paying these duties and taxes on behalf of O'Brien Car Sales?
It would not, based on what we are now being told by the Ministry of Finance, it would not be on behalf of the supplier.
So,
but it is a requirement that of the ministry to pay these taxes.
No, but your final agreement with him was a final sale, which would have included the all taxes and duties. So, I'm not clear in how.
Well, let me just clarify something. The moratorium that's being granted is to enable clearance. So that is without the payment of the
No, go again?
is to enable clearance of those 50 vehicles, 50 cars and 16 pickups without the payment of the GCT and SCT right now. So that's what
So it's a waiver that they're getting?
That's what the moratorium is doing. But we haven't, it's not a waiver, it's just to allow that clearance because we have the priority to have the vehicles, so we need to have those vehicles,
that.
right?
No, this is why we're here, because it is a priority.
Right.
But this is the process that we are dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
So clearance is one thing, but the payment on the GCT and SCT...
I don't even reach a clearance.
Right.
I'm talking about the GCT, the payments of the duties on behalf of O'Brien Car Sales that the Ministry of National Security...
No, we're not paying on behalf.
So who is paying it?
Well, we're going to have to have a discussion to invoke...
No, we can't clear the vehicles and then have the discussion after.
Well, we need the vehicles, so...
No, Madam Pierce, this reminds me, let me not say it. You can't put the cart before the horse because we are in a desperate situation. You have paid a company
True.
$213 million to deliver these vehicles. Huh?
And they have not been able to do so.
Right, and I still stand by what I said, that this contract seems to be altered along the way to facilitate.
No.
My words.
No.
My words has been altered along the way to facilitate, because your agreement with O'Brien Car Sales is for them to deliver that's a final price,
right,
which would have included their taxes and duties. Right? So how is it then that O'Brien is then coming to the ministry to ask for a waiver? And the ministry, not only the Ministry of National Security, but the Ministry of Finance not upholding the contract on that final sale price?
Can I just make a clarification on the waiver? Because
I like the word you use, because that's what it is.
No, you speak, because I read from the contract that we did everything we can in our best efforts to see if we could get any benefits to aid the supplier according to the contract. It's standard government procedure. We would have done it for any other supplier. We did so, we wrote to finance, and they could not support it. So our actions in regards to seeking any exemptions was in keeping with our obligations to do so under the contract. And
I made a decision to follow that procedure. We cannot be said. Let me finish. That we did not try, or we did not do according to the clause in the contract that we made on our rights and our best interest, and as it said so. So we're at a point now where we have exhausted that. Now let's talk about that.
Where it should have reached is for you to ask back for the deposit. And remember, I bet you that he has underpriced his own product to be able to get the contract, hence why he's in this problem.
Pierce.
Yes, sir.
I've two questions for you. Number one, how much is this going to cost your ministry in excess of the contract by paying this SCT and GCT? What amount does that come to?
I'll take that one. For the 50 Toyota Corolla Axios that we're now seeking to get from the supplier, plus I think about 16 double cab pickups, we're looking at approximately $16 million.
So
for the SCT and GCT combined.
So 16 million additional to the money on the contract.
Yes.
All right. Second, and I'm going to pick up exactly where the member was. I refer you to your own document. It says here in a letter dated August the 25th, O'Brien's International wrote to the ministry requesting that the general consumption tax and the special consumption tax being charged by the Jamaica Customs on 50 motor cars and 26 pickups be paid by the ministry as they were unable to absorb these costs. This is what's in your document. You state in the document that in an internal meeting subsequent to this, the decision was taken that the ministry will not bear these costs, as it is the obligation of the contractor. I repeat, as it is the obligation of the contractor to pay the relevant duties and taxes associated with the clearance of the vehicles as per the contract. Notwithstanding, you decided to then refer to the Ministry of Finance. On November the 2nd, 2017, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service advised that the request was not supported. My question to you, who has changed their mind and on what basis?
We don't have anything in writing about a change of mind. I'm just telling you that this morning we heard that discussion from customs. We don't have anything in writing. So our next step really is, because we have a letter. Well, I don't really like to how public is this information? Because we haven't collected our stuff yet, you know.
Well,
right?
All committees of the House are open.
Well, because we are now about to write to Attorney General to say, please guide us on how we can.
Absolutely.
So we have that letter, and we have it to move to the Attorney General now. We were hearing from customs that they got a what was the way you said it? A moratorium, but we don't have that in writing. Okay,
Ms. McIntosh, I would just say to you that for the look, last in 2016, early in the year, this discussion about motor vehicles, 400 million in the budget, and the importance of getting motor vehicles, and we are now in December 2017, and this is amazing that we will be getting this at this point, and quite frankly, if you have a contract, the government has a contract, I would advise you strongly that you seek the advice of the Attorney General, and I suspect the Auditor General should be brought in on this as well.
Well, as I said, this is the point we're at, but we wanted to make sure that we carried out our obligation according to the contract, and we were guided by the statement that says we must endeavor to. Just read it for me again, please.
If any tax exemptions, reductions, allowances, or privileges may be available to the supplier in the procuring entity's country, the procuring entity shall use its best efforts to enable the supplier to benefit from any such tax savings to the maximum allowable extent.
All right,
I would admit that we're at the extent of utilizing our best interest.
I understand that because of the nature.
Okay.
But I am speaking on behalf of my...
Remember, just 1 second. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between seeking a waiver and you going into your budget.
No, which is the point I'm making.
Which comes from the taxpayers' money.
But we haven't. We haven't.
No, but
we haven't.
Bear with me, Madam Pierce. Bear with me. And I'm going to speak on behalf of my constituents now. Because the Ministry of Finance is going to recover those duties and taxes. Who is going to pay for it? That's all I want to know, you know. Because you have a contract with this company which you said would have included all taxes and duties delivered to you. They have now come to you asking for these waivers or moratorium, whatever you want to call it.
Not moratorium.
What, no, you're giving them a moratorium to
we are not giving everything.
They have asked for some exemptions. They have asked for some exemptions, which is your words in this. Yeah. They have asked for some exemptions. The ministries went ahead to try and see how best they can facilitate. Because they have made a request. You said you went to the Ministry of Finance, so you're trying to facilitate. But why has the ministry found out why is it that this company, at that point, after being awarded a contract, is now asking for those waivers?
Minister, we have the same concern.
Member.
Right, we have the same concern, and we're seeing it from the point of view that you're seeing it, which is why we have taken the decision under the contract to see how best we could facilitate. By having the Ministry of Finance saying to us that they weren't able to support it, we are now ready to take whatever necessary steps under the contract to ensure that the supplier will make good on the contract.
So you notice that we had written a letter and said demanding that he deliver on the November 24th, which was Friday.
Yeah, but the 90 days expired on June 5th. And the supplier in a letter dated July 5th to highlight the following. So it is after the expiry date when the vehicles should have been delivered that he is writing. Now, is it that the 200 vehicles should have been delivered by that 90 day? Yeah? And even after this delivery, you're still not up to the 200 vehicles?
No.
Still won't be. Right. So there's still a problem. There's still a problem. He got an extension. The company got an extension. 2. Right? 2. So the vehicles, you gave him an extension to deliver the vehicles on the 28th of November.
No, the final extension expired on September 4.
Well, it even makes the situation even worse.
Yeah.
It makes the situation even worse. Mm-hmm. We should have already gotten to the Attorney General to see how it is at best. Because if after getting $213 million deposit, you have accepted that $213 million in good faith that I can deliver these vehicles as per contract. And at the end of your the delivery date, you are now writing to the ministry to ask.
But we wanted to be clear that we were covered by the extension and the advance payment. So that is why we wanted that to have been renewed.
40 million out of 200 million that has been paid. That can't protect my lady down in
it's to cover that 213 million.
That has been paid to him.
That performance bond.
Eh?
Right. What we had to do was to ask him. We were about to, the advance payment security that was supplied by the contractor was about to expire. So before the extension was granted, we requested that he send to us or submitted to us an extended advance payment guarantee up to the end of December.
Right. Well, let's come to this point now, whereas Madam Pierce said she has not gotten anything in writing. You have just heard.
Morning.
Just this morning. Yeah. So as far as I am concerned, there's nothing official for those vehicles to be delivered to the Ministry of National Security. as the chairman said, what next?
I have my letter to the Attorney General. I just held it until we were finished here.
What I would say, and to
would this not, member, would
Morrison.
this not go to the, we have to suggest, because certainly this would need to be reviewed by the contractor general as well. Because this definitely
yes, he spoke to me this morning and said he was going to request some things from me. But I told him we were coming here this morning, and afterwards we would follow.
I suggest that all be brought in, because I must tell you, I'm very concerned that with a contract that has been entered into between the government and a company, that the terms of the contract should be so altered. And when I say
they
altered,
are not altered.
No, please, let me just say why I say altered.
Because we've been following the process, so we haven't altered anything.
No. If it is paid by your ministry.
It has not been paid.
That's the point.
It has not been paid.
So that's the point I'm making. If it were paid.
Right. So it's not altered.
No, absolutely. So let me state that what I'm saying is that if a contract entered into by the government of Jamaica and a company is so altered, then it would be grave concerns, scandalous. And the fact of the matter is that the various agencies that protect the funds of the people of Jamaica must be brought in at an early date. And I say that based on the fact that your early considerations were that it was not part of the contract. The Ministry of Finance also indicated they had denied it, which says that they were not in agreement. So for you now to be told that to give a
just something I hear. We just heard. I must state it has not happened.
I would strongly suggest you do not move till you get something in writing.
Absolutely, I agree with you. So I'm just saying, that this is what I've heard. But our intention, we were going to the Attorney General post this meeting.
And I would suggest
so we are giving
members that before
Friday,
you move, if and when you decide, if and when you make a decision, I would suggest that you send a brief to the committee so that we are advised prior to you moving, because I think members would be somewhat concerned and would like to see what decision is finally made. Member Campbell?
Chairman, I think it's about the right approach to take. We don't speculate when we know the facts. Where I think we're in a little bit
as strange as the facts may sound.
As strange as the facts may sound. But I think we could allow the ministry the opportunity to do it, because if the hearsay is really saying to us that the vehicles are going to be delivered today, that's the contractor's realm. And if at the point when those vehicles are delivered, then the ministry doesn't have something in place, I think it would be time for us to do some further investigation and perhaps call in the appropriate bodies who would deal with that. But we would perhaps be wise now not to speculate any further and to see whether or not those vehicles are in fact delivered.
Yeah, but I think what the committee, and it is what the committee is, where we're leaning, and I ask my members, is to advise. And I think the permanent secretary is in the same position, that she not move to pay anything on those motor vehicles until this situation is resolved, simply because if you do that, you're going to find legally we put the government in a bad position, and quite frankly, the justification for it would have to be very strong.
And I want to make it very clear that I didn't say we were going to pay.
Okay.
I am making it very clear. I'm going through the process as the report indicates, and I'm now at the process of turning it over to the Attorney General. I'm just giving the information as I heard, but it is not that we were about to pay anything.
right.
But let me just ask Mr.
Yes,
Morrison.
remember, I think you had some other questions.
So Morrison, and just to come back on to the due diligence, because my information is that the vehicles, the 30 that were delivered, has the CVT transmission on them. To the vehicles that were already delivered, the 30?
Well, initially, we had sought to procure vehicles without the CVT transmission, but shortly after we learned that for vehicles, for the year vehicles that we were seeking to get, and that we would not have been able to get vehicles without the CVT transmission technology.
And what is the reason, why is it that in your technical specifications you indicated, why is it that you are looking for vehicles without? Because I see it here in bold caps, all caps, no CVT, mandatory.
Well, that was a requirement of the JCF, but as I've said before, after realizing
but why?
Well, all the suppliers who submitted a bid at the time, they all had vehicles with CVT transmission. So we realized that if we had stuck to that, we would have not gotten any vehicles at all for the JCF.
And the reason why the JCF had said so is because of the cost of replacing those CVT, the CVTs. Yeah?
Well, I think that was one of the reasons, if not the main reason, why they had requested that.
Why I'm asking the question? Because if it is that the specification, and it just shows that the due diligence that should have been done, because it is a fact that you would not have found vehicles of that year without the CVT.
Right.
Yeah? But yet still in your technical specifications, you ask for no CVT. And the reason why the JCF asked for no CVT, because it going to cost about $1 million just to change one of those. The cost to change one of the transmission alone. You can't repair it as you would a normal transmission. Yeah? That is why they asked, and that's why from start I said that this contract has been altered along the way. Right? No.
Well, I wouldn't say altered
because it has been because it's a bad policy.
The procurement process is such that you develop your specification, and while developing your specifications, you realize along the way that you might have to change one or two things depending on what the market has to offer.
Yeah,
but the contract was not altered. The contract was
not, but you have allowed the contract.
No, because the specification, let me finish.
Yes.
The specifications went out before the contract was finalized. So don't say the contract was altered.
But look, if the ministry had done proper due diligence.
Don't shout at me.
I'm not shouting at you, madam.
The matter of the CVT was dealt with long before we got to the stage of contract.
Did the ministry then find out from the police why is it that they wanted no vehicles with CVT?
Yes, and we spoke to that earlier, and we had decided that we would not have been able to get any vehicles at all because all the suppliers reported that it would not have been possible to get vehicles without the CVT.
That's why you only had a minimal amount of companies who said they would supply, because they know that they could not get vehicles without the CVTs. What is going to be the cost now to the ministry and to the JCF to repair these vehicles, because the police are complaining about them already out there. And we are continuing with the same policy to import the vehicles with these CVTs.
We'll be doing an assessment.
To whose interest?
To see, you talk about the complaints that are happening, so I am putting in place a total assessment of what has happened to record these complaints so that we can make good, decisioning going forward in terms of with the facts.
Yes, please, because you, Madam Pierce, Chief Financial Officer, know the constraints that you have and how many vehicles you have parked over at transport without being able to provide parts for them. Now to purchase vehicles with a transmission that the police said that they don't want, and then to import those vehicles. You're going to end up with these vehicles when the transmission gone parked over there and still end up in the same position that you are in now.
But can I just say that the matter of the transmission is really a new technology. times gone by, you had cars without air conditioning. It's difficult to buy a car these days without air conditioning.
The police still order, when they order new vehicles, still require that it has no CVTs because
they adjusted that position.
Because of the type of driving and mileage that these vehicles do. Right?
Just for clarity, the contract, the request for tender that had gone out, the tenders that had gone out, was it a specification of that tender?
Yes.
That those vehicles not have, what do you call it? CVTs, CVT transmission. Was that specifically stated in the tender?
Yes, it was in the specification.
And at what point was that changed?
Well, it wasn't changed. It was just after it was sent out and we started getting feedback from the market, then we realized that we would not have been able to get vehicles without this new technology. So the JCF was approached about it, and it was decided that we couldn't escape it, so we had was to go ahead with that.
At what point was that decision taken?
After
the selection
before
of
the contract was finalized.
Right. Yeah, but so did it go out? Did other members, was it circulated to other members?
Yes.
To whom?
You're asking if the specification went out to all?
No, because you said that the specification was a specification in the tender.
Yes.
So I'm simply saying to you, when was that decision? How was that notified? How were persons notified? If the tender that went out said this was a part of the specifications, how would they have known if something else had not gone out?
Okay. Well,
or was it only those who have tendered that were told of the change?
No, it would have been everybody, because the specification would have been in the document at the point where everybody was picking up the document.
What I was trying to find out is that, but you would have persons who would have dropped out of the tendering process because they know that they can't supply the vehicles without the CVT.
If you are changing a public, how a public tender goes, if you put out a tender, you put out a tender.
Yes.
If you intend to change it, then you have to change it publicly.
Yes.
You can't go and then just say to who you want to say, because persons out there are going to say, no, I did not know this, and obviously this is going to change the terms of reference, because as the member is saying, there are challenges with getting it. So if you have changed that, you're making it easy for some, where others who have just said, no, I can't deal with that because the specifications are too tight.
Well, if you're asking if an addendum went out advising that we will now be accepting the CVT transmission, no, that wasn't done.
Okay. This process and where we're at a year later is very messy. From October of last year, you know, we've been in this process trying to get motor vehicles, and in the interim, we're really having problems. So, members, where do we go from here?
Well, no, as I indicated,
sorry.
I'll be writing
I include you in.
To the Attorney General to make a definite ruling as to how to proceed.
So I was just going to say, as soon as Madam Pierce has gotten a response from the Attorney General, then as a committee that
and as you said, the vehicles that have come without the electronic CVT. All right. Yeah, we have issues. Members, what I'm going to suggest, Pierce, you obviously have some homework to do. I think we need to dot the I's and cross the T's. Quite frankly, we are here concerned. We we ask you to come before us because, quite frankly, a year later, we still don't have the requisite motor vehicles for our constabulary force. And this whole process has just gone around and around. I suggest as a matter of urgency that you speak with the Attorney General and quite frankly, make direct contact with them, the Office of Solicitor General as well, ask them for a ruling as quickly as possible, and before you proceed, I would ask that you make some contact with us, and we will circulate it to the members, and then we can determine from there how we proceed. All right, members?
Well, we would like to conclude this at the end of the December because the bond that we have extension expires. So it is in our interest, and that is where my timeline was by the end of December.
So there's some vehicles sitting on the wharf? No?
Yes.
How many you said? Microphone.
Approximately about 66 vehicles, including 50 cars and about 16 pickups.
66 vehicles.
So if you bring those cars and vehicles plus what has come before, you'd be at about 100.
Under 96.
We would be at our
over.
80. Yeah.
So you would,
90.
but the question then arises: you're still only halfway through the contract.
That's the point I'm making.
Right.
I made
But we
earlier.
but the halfway that we're through is equal to the advance, the deposit that he got, the supplier got.
Oh, so you're working to get to the
But
the
Madam
deposit
PS, let me
at
tell you.
least.
Yes.
You're working
Chair,
to get to the
but Chair,
deposit at least.
it still makes for a messy conclusion because, believe me, I feel your pain because the last time you got any substantial amount of vehicles was about 2015, the police force. So you're going 2 years without any real replenishing the fleet itself, while the police is hampered out there. You don't have enough money for parts, you don't have enough vehicles out there. Police can't respond as they want, and you're now going to have to go back through another tendering process to go and get additional vehicles.
Well, I stand to be guided by your great minds here. I really do.
Chairman, may I just inquire, do you have any knowledge as to whether there are some vehicles in transit? No, in transit. I mean, are they on the, or are they on vessels?
No, we don't have that. We don't have any knowledge of any such.
Mr. Campbell, it looks to me from afar that everyone is working to just at least achieve the halfway mark. I suspect that what both the ministry and Mr. O'Brien are doing are trying to get to the 100 vehicle, 200 mark, so that money paid, at least you don't have too much outstanding. But the fact of the matter is that this is untidy, it is messy at the best. PS, please keep us informed, and certainly within the next 2 weeks, before we formally adjourn, we'd like to get a report from you that we can circulate to the members, and we will report to Parliament on our findings. Thank you, PS. Thank you, members from the ministry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, members. Thank you.
music for any commercial purpose, you need a JCAP license.
Of course, and I benefit when my music is used commercially.
JCAP, the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers, protects the rights of its members and worldwide creators of musical works by issuing licenses for the use of these works.
If you use music for any commercial purpose,
You need a JCAP license.
comply with the law.
Call JCAP at 948-5937 and 948-6439.
Get a JCAP license now.
You can accomplish what you will.
Jamaica to the world.
Be an active participant in your child's life. Spend time with your child. No phones, no television, no distractions. Just the two of you.
Just the two of us.
Get to know your child through play. Why not go to the park and get on the monkey bars? Sharing a meal can also be a time of bonding. If your child's in school, be involved in school activities. Speak with your child's teacher, follow up on their progress in school, and see how you can help. Assist them with homework, attend parent-teacher meetings, and support school fundraising events. Remember, your child's future is in your hands. Safeguard it.
So glad you are a child of mine.
I would like to wake up one morning when the police are just doing traffic duties and keeping the peace, and they don't have to worry about even their own security. Take responsibility for yourself and your surroundings and for your neighbors. Be your neighbor's keeper. Be your brother's keeper. Let's come together and create a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
PBCJ is now the source of information about Indian culture. Watch Incredible India on PBCJ and learn more about their homeland, Indian mythology, religion, food, music, and dance. Join us Sundays at 3 p.m. and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. for Incredible India. Step into a world of mystique, timeless symbols, and ancient people.
Every 9 years, the Minoans made sacrifice to the Minotaur.
Discover a world of magnificent beasts and the world's ultimate predators. Let's learn about these ancient worlds and magnificent creatures on Wonderful World, right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
Taurus Riley, Janeet Bailey, and Richie Loops make good music.
If you use music for any commercial purpose, you need a JCAP license.
Of course, and I benefit when my music is used commercially.
JCAP, the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers, protects the rights of its members and worldwide creators of musical works by issuing licenses for the use of these works.
If you use music for any commercial purpose,
You need a JCAP license.
comply with the law.
Call JCAP at 948-5937 and 948-6439.
Get a JCAP license now.
Did you know that in a recent survey done by the OCA in schools across Jamaica, 43% of the students received inappropriate messages from strangers. The OCA wants you to be smart online. Never speak to persons you don't know. Parents, encourage your children to be social but be smart.
This message was brought to you by the Office of the Children's Advocate with support from UNICEF.
If you have information about illegal guns, call 311. Get the Guns, an initiative of the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
Step into a world of mystique, timeless symbols, and ancient people.
Every 9 years, the Minoans made sacrifice to the Minotaur.
Discover a world of magnificent beasts and the world's ultimate predators. Let's learn about these ancient worlds and magnificent creatures on Wonderful World, right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.
School-aged children 4 to 18 years old in urban environments are increasingly exposed to environmental risks for prolonged periods each day. Described as environmental health triggers, these risks are those elements within the environment that may lead to health problems or environmentally attributable diseases. Many of these environmental factors are in turn associated with development of cognitive skills as well as learning and developmental disabilities. Clean, quiet, safe, comfortable and healthy surroundings are therefore important components of successful teaching and learning as well as development of the total child.
How do environmental factors affect learning? It can do this by affecting your brain development. In fact, it can affect your ability to learn. It can do this by affecting your health. If your health is affected, if you're chronically ill, meaning you're sick all the time, this can affect your attendance in school and also your attention in school. Now, one big example is something like asthma, which we're all familiar with and we all pretty much take for granted, but it also is influenced a lot by your environment. If you're ill, and you're always going to hospital, always need to be attended to, then you'll lose attendance in school. Your attendance in school will fall. Additionally, one of the things that asthma does is that you cough a lot, especially at night. If you're coughing a lot and you're not sleeping well, what can happen is the following day at school, you're tired, you're not able to concentrate, you're not able to focus, you're just basically drowsy and all you want to do is sleep.
Research has shown that learning in schools may be influenced by indoor air quality, ventilation and thermal comfort, lighting, acoustics, building age and quality, school size and class size. High absenteeism in some areas of the USA has been associated with poor indoor air quality.
My name is Joy Crawford. I am a distinguished president of the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. What we're here to do this morning is introduce to you a project on the environment.
The Kiwanis Club of New Kingston has placed a major emphasis on the learning environment of urban schools. Dubbed the Kiwanis Environmental Health and Learning Initiative, this project focuses on reducing factors in the school environment that may lead to learning and developmental disorders. Air quality, noise, toxic chemicals, sanitation, and food safety. Clean air has the correct balance of oxygen and other naturally occurring gases that will keep us alert and receptive to information. When our air becomes polluted, it contains higher levels of impurities which can be detrimental to our health. The air that envelops our cities is clogged with impurities. Air pollutants result from normal domestic activities as well as from industrial sources. Air contaminants are produced from external as well as internal sources. The location of the building is a major factor in determining the health of the environment. Schools that are located close to major road corridors, industrial and commercial centers, and city dumps will have greater contaminant loads. Oxides of carbon, sulfur, and nitrogen produced as a byproduct of combustion from homes, motor vehicles, and factories. Volatile organic compounds, such as vapors from paints, air fresheners, hair products, and art supplies. Other gases such as hydrogen sulfide, which gives a rotten egg smell, and methane produced from the breakdown of organic matter in our garbage and drains, as well as particulates, are the common air contaminants. Particulate matter encompasses dust, pollen, microorganisms such as mold, viruses, and bacteria, and inorganic materials such as lead. We generally call most particulates dust, but it is important to know the types of particulates as they have different effects on our health and well-being. For example, airborne mold and pollen often trigger asthma and other respiratory ailments. Lead can become airborne from flaking lead paints or present in the soil and water.
So in Jamaica, there are areas that are notorious for having a high concentration of lead in the soil, and as a result, we have a lot of children that have manifestations of lead poisoning. Now, how does lead affect our children? Lead has been studied extensively worldwide. It's not only a problem in Jamaica. And how it does this is that it can affect the messengers in the brain that actually help with your learning. It affects the development of your brain. It can actually cause diffuse brain disease, and it also can cause anemia. And children that have anemia have been documented as having a lower IQ than children in the average population. It can also cause fits. Now, fits are something that Jamaicans are scared of. It's a frightening experience, and lead can contribute to this. Again, we can go back to the original thing of absenteeism. If you're having seizures, you're going to need some amount of medical attention, so you will be absent from school. If you have repeated seizures, eventually it may result in some amount of brain impairment, which can affect your attention in school, and additionally, it can affect your self-esteem. If you're different from your peers, this can cause you to be depressed, and it will also affect your ability to learn.
Our air indoors is also often polluted, and in some cases can be worse than the outdoor air. These impurities may come from external sources, building materials, furnishings, air conditioning systems, and worsen by poor building ventilation and air circulation. When contaminated air gets inside, if there isn't an adequate mechanism to remove the stale air and introduce fresh air, then persons will become ill breathing in the stale air. A common problem indoors is high carbon dioxide levels that causes headaches, sleepiness, and dizziness. Care should be taken when using laboratory chemicals, cleaners, pesticides, even personal care products such as perfumes and hairsprays, as well as deodorizers, to open windows and doors, and where possible, wear a mask. The amount of bodies in a room can quickly reduce the quality of the air indoors. Overcrowded classrooms with low ventilation levels can result in high carbon dioxide levels and other adverse indoor air conditions. These impurities must be evaluated through measurement so as to determine how best to treat them. Kiwanis has partnered with Environmental Solutions Limited to measure air quality and noise in select urban schools. The results will provide necessary background data that will help to guide the design of corrective measures. Our environment is critical to our well-being and our health, and yet we continue to disregard good practices that will ensure our safety. Our children, parents, teachers, and communities need to understand the risks and how they can help to reduce the effects.
Yes, we were talking about cannabis at that time. All right, so members, we have the ministry. I will allow the permanent secretary to introduce his team. However, today we have RADA, Sugar Transformation Unit, the commodity boards, including coffee, cocoa, banana, sugar, coconut dairy, and the 4-H clubs. I don't know, members, what we'll be able to complete, but let me welcome the members from the ministry. I would ask the permanent secretary to introduce his team if he has any remarks, and then members, we can determine how we would proceed with that. So over to you, Mr. Stanberry.
Morning, Chairman. With me here today, to my immediate left, Ms. Lorna Green, Principal Finance Officer of the Ministry. Mrs. Paulette Lyons Dodd, our Director for Project Monitoring. Mr. Peter Thompson, CEO of RADA. Behind me, Mr. Delroy Coley, Director of Corporate Planning. Mr. George Callahan from the Sugar Industrial Authority. Mr. Lawrence from the Jamaica Dairy Development Board. Mr. Willis from the Coffee Industry Board. Behind them, Mr. Harold Lewis from the Banana Board. And on the other side, Dr. Ronald Blake and Ms. Shanice Allen from the Jamaica Forage Clubs.
Okay. All right, members. We have members of the commodity boards here. Which ones do we have?
Coffee, sugar, dairy board,
okay,
banana.
All right. Okay, and what about the sugar transformation?
The sugar transformation, the head can be here, but whatever questions I can handle it.
Okay, all right. Let us start with members. Let's start with the commodity boards, and specifically, if there are any general questions, because we can move through quickly, if possible. But I know just in a sidebar with members, there were some discussions about the coffee board. So I would, P.S. Lately there have been some issues with regard to coffee in the sort of public sphere. And I think members, from the perspective of how government is involved in, with regard to how we are involved in it, it would be good if we could get a sort of brief, very brief overview of what the situation is with regard to coffee nationally, and then we can, if there are any follow-up questions. So I would start there.
Thank you, sir. As you'll recall, Chairman, a couple of years ago, specifically about 2007, 2008, the world was faced with a recession that affected our chief market for coffee exports, Japan. And that caused Japan at the time to reduce the amount that they purchase, as well as the price. At that time, the government was forced to intervene to buy up the coffee and then store it and sell it. The reduction in price that was occasioned by those circumstances caused a lot of the coffee farmers to exit production, and it caused production to decrease considerably. By the time the recession was over and the Japanese was ready again to engage, coffee became scarce. And so our exporters were in a position to demand some extraordinarily high price. But those prices clearly were not sustainable. As a result of those high prices, coffee growers were getting as much as $10,000 to $12,000 per box rather. But everybody knew, frankly, that that was not sustainable, because the average price over the long term was more in the region of about $5,000 to $6,000. So that high price induced many people to go back into production. So this year we are seeing, and approximately from the document we gave you, a good increase in production from about 5 million kilograms to well over 7, right? But the Japanese are saying we can't sustain those prices. So correspondingly, the dealers and the processors have reduced the prices to the farmers. And that has caused some unease because we have seen prices coming down from 8,000 to 9,000 last year per box to 5,000 to 6,000 this year. When the marketing people and the dealers and processors went on their annual pilgrimage to Japan to negotiate prices, they came back with some resistance from that market in terms of increasing the prices. The farmers came to us in the ministry because they said that they couldn't live with the $6,000 per box. What we have done, Chairman, we recognize that we're not going to get much movement in the price in the Japanese market, and most of our coffee is in fact exported to that market. But the situation is more than just price. The truth is that if productivity levels on the farms were higher, the farmers could have in fact lived with that price. So what the ministry has done in conjunction with the Coffee Board is to come up with an $80 million program to assist the industry with technical services and inputs and so on, to assist the farmers to increase their production and productivity at the farm level. And that program is being rolled out by the Coffee Industry Board in conjunction with the processing companies. Ultimately, we're only going to overcome this problem in 2 ways. One, to increase, as I said, productivity at the farm gate, and also to see how much we can diversify the market so that some of the coffee can flow into countries other than Japan.
The price does, well, Coffee Board previously used to have a role in, a more integral role in the whole coffee market, because it not only did the regulatory, but it owned farms and factories. Those were divested. Now, what role does the Coffee Board now play? Is it solely regulatory, or does it play a role in overseas in with the Japanese, meeting the discussions, the price, all of that? Are they involved, or is it solely those who are in the marketing, the larger companies that do it?
You're correct, Chairman. In 2004, we had the government selling its commercial holdings, separating in the first instance the regulatory arm of the Coffee Industry Board from the commercial. And that is when Wallingford Coffee Company was created. We subsequently sold Wallingford recently. So government, you're correct, is no longer in the business of growing and selling coffee. However, the Coffee Board still performs the critical regulatory role to certify the quality of Jamaican coffee going into the market, because the market does demand an independent certifier, if there is such a word, of our coffee. The Coffee Board, as I understand it, goes into the marketplace with the processors and the exporters, but not in the capacity as a seller, just to assure the market of our quality assurance systems and so on.
Yes. Chairman,
I just want to follow up on that matter because I know that the Minister for Agriculture recently was at an event giving full endorsement and seemingly leadership where the Chinese ambassador was present and seeking to establish now a different marketing arrangement involving the Chinese. And I thought that was an initiative of the government of Jamaica, and in particular the ministry, to offer some competition between Japan and China, and to involve the government in what seems to be direct marketing arrangements now involving the Chinese. Is that the initiative of the government of Jamaica?
Not quite, member. The event to which you refer was an event that was sponsored by the member of parliament from East Rural St. Andrew that has a significant portion of the agriculture in her constituency in coffee. And she invited the minister and all the players were there. The government is not involved in any direct arrangement with the government of China in relation to the marketing of coffee. The truth is, though, given the fact that we are in fact producing more coffee this year than the Japanese market can absorb. So I think in a general sense, the government is encouraging the dealers and the processors to diversify. So that was within that context that the Chinese ambassador was invited to that gathering. There was an initiative in 2009, 2008, somewhere there, where it did in fact sign an MOU with a Chinese entity, but that would have expired. Probably Mr. Willis could give a little more detail on that.
Morning all. Well, that entity signed a 2-year agreement to take coffee in China. That had expired in 2012. However, there's still some coffee that is going into that market as well.
The GOJ is not spearheading this.
No, we are not involved directly in any marketing. I mean, we are there at those events to endorse and to encourage and so on, but not as a direct player.
And what we are seeing here is that the production of coffee is down to 7,500 tons from a historic high of 15,000. So we are down 50%.
You could put it another way, remember. You could say it's up from 2015 to, from
depends how you put it.
The glass is half empty.
Exactly. Mr. Pierce, I was looking through the financials. For the coffee board, is there a subvention for the coffee board, annual subvention, or is it self?
Well, the coffee board until recently was self-financing. In the last year, they have had some challenges. As you know, with the reduction in production, there's a commensurate reduction in the cess and the fees and so on. On top of that, you would have recalled, Chairman, that there was an event last year, a flooding, on Marcus Garvey Drive that inundated.
Which is where I was going.
Yeah,
no.
Inundated their warehouse, and they had to pay out quite a bit in insurance, and that affected their cash flow. So in the last couple of months, we have had to provide some support because of those.
Well, that's where I was going.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, there was a flood on Marcus Garvey, and a fair amount of coffee was destroyed. Do we know how much? Well, the monitor.
So Willis, can you answer that question?
In terms of volume or
dollar
value, dollar value. Okay, it was 386 million Jamaican dollars
worth of coffee that was destroyed.
Yes.
Okay, at that time, that coffee was at your facility.
That is correct.
All right. Now, whose coffee was that? Because you're no longer in the production of coffee.
Right.
So that coffee belonged to
processors who we export on behalf of.
So is that the majority of persons, does it have to come to you?
It has to. All green coffee is handled, the export of green coffee is handled by the coffee board.
So therefore, mandatory, all the
Yes.
coffee has to come to you.
Right.
So persons who grow coffee, even whether they process it or not, at the end of the day, they have to send the coffee to you.
That is correct.
And the coffee was in your facility.
Yes.
And there was a flood and this coffee was damaged. Now, what has happened to the persons who were the owners of the 300 million? What has happened? Has there been a payout to them?
Part of that coffee was insured by the owner or the processor. And coffee board
When you say by their owner or processor, you're saying that they're separate? You want to just break it, just clarify, walk us through it. We just want to understand it.
A processor could process for some contract processing as well. So the owner.
How much of it was in your possession? How much of it were you responsible for of the 300 million worth of coffee?
In total, there was $386 million of coffee that was lost. I think approximately 1.1 million US dollars worth of the coffee was insured by the owner. So they
when you say by the owner, you're being very specific, by separate persons.
Right. The person who we're about to export that coffee for.
Okay, all right. So that's about 120, 130 million.
Right.
So about 260 would be
260
yours.
something.
Okay. What has happened to those persons who had put their coffee in there that the coffee is destroyed? This happened when?
In September 2016, sorry, last year.
Last year, September.
Yes.
So it's about a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
What has happened to them? Have they received any money from anybody?
All right. Coffee board has made some payout.
Approximately how much?
Approximately 100 million.
All right. So you have paid out, and that would have been a subvention from the ministry?
No, out of coffee board's funds.
Oh, out of coffee board's funds.
So
how do you determine how and who you pay out to? Is there a percentage of how much you had, or is there some formula you have that allows you to pay out?
All right. There was all the stock was taken in account, and it is based on each entity's percentage that the payment was done.
So you're making a percentage payment on the coffee.
Right.
All right. Now, that coffee was not insured?
It was underinsured. I mean, coffee board carries an insurance, but it wasn't adequate.
When you say, well, how much would you get from that insurance? Do you expect?
I'm not certain what the figure is now, but
yeah, but
it wasn't. It just wasn't enough.
So how much are you going to? All right, let me put it a different way. Those persons that gave you coffee, the persons that gave you coffee, they have to, because all the coffee has to go through. So they would expect that you are going to care for their coffee. So they're expecting to get something back for it. The question I'm asking is, how much do you expect to pay them and when? And where will you get the funds from?
Right. What Coffee Board has been doing, in addition to that 100 million, they've been issuing credit notes to those entities to offset whatever is owed to them.
How do you mean?
Those credit notes, right? Those credit notes come about from cess payments for current shipments. They would make cess payment to Coffee Board.
Yeah,
so
but anyhow you look at it, the reason we're having this discussion is that money is fungible. So the fact is, if you have a deficit of 260 million, if they don't pay that cess, it means you don't have that money coming in. Somewhere along the line, there is a hole of $260 million. So the question we're trying to find out is, why have we found ourselves in that position, A? And B, how are we going to find the money to fill that hole?
And if I could just intervene. The fact is that, as Mr. Willis pointed out, a percentage of that coffee was not insured. Again, it's a practical business decision that I think the Coffee Board had to take at a point in time, whether or not they had the cash flow to be paying high insurance premium, and so they resorted to self-insurance. So when the event occurred, they in fact fork out 100 million from their reserves. And as Mr. Willis indicated, that about 1.1 million US was in fact insured. So if you add the 100 million Jamaican that was paid out to the 1.1 million insurance, that monies that were recovered, that would take us to about
250 million.
250. So the exposure really is
another 100.
Another 100. So what we have been doing is two things. One, we have worked out schedules with the marketing companies so affected, so that we can offset cess due to the Coffee Board with that insurance payment. And you ask, the question is started with Chairman, why the government end up giving Coffee Board subvention. All of that caused the Coffee Board to be in some problems in terms of their cash flow, and that is why the government had to come in with some support for the Coffee Board, because they would have been receiving less income in terms of cess foregone that have been offset. That is what the situation is.
How are you preventing this from happening again? Suppose it flood again week after next. You have insurance?
Well, two things. As you know, the Coffee Board is in the middle. Well, not only the Coffee Board, the entire commodities boards. We are on the cusp of consolidating all of those coffee boards within the new JACA. And that is one of the urgent things that the JACA would have to consider. Apart from that, we are in discussions with the people who are in the construction of the road, because there could be some relationship between the road construction and the extent of the flooding. So we are engaging the road contractors, and we keep fingers crossed that something will come out of that. But JACA will be mandated to look at adequate insurance.
No, I take all you're saying, but back to sort of, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. My problem is, JACA is coming. If it flood next week, the question is, do you have insurance? Do you have some coverage now? Because if having had that happen last year, with the rain and all the things were happening, if it happens again, people are going to say, but you're not easy. So I'm just saying, is there something in place now?
Yes, there is. There is insurance in place to cover the stock.
And you have increased the value?
Yeah, the value has been increased.
So that it can take all.
And what we've been doing.
In other words, so enough is there now. Insurance is there, including insurance for flooding.
Right.
Because you know, you could have insurance for hurricane and cyclone, and insurance has to be very specific. You have all of it and enough to cover what you have in stock.
Yes.
Right, that was the point I was getting.
Well, I mentioned Jacka because the truth is that we have to look beyond just the coffee, because Jacka will include all the other commodities. And
Yeah,
the same
so
approach.
this is a general principle that we would want. All right, members?
Mr. Stanbury, just from my own understanding, you say that you had coverage going into something like 1.1 million US?
Not the coffee board, the
independent.
The coffee processors had their coffee insured. So about 1.1 million of the value that was there was in fact insured.
And are they pursuing a claim for the excess over that which they were able to recover from their insurers?
Yes, they're interested in a claim, and some payments have been made to them.
No.
Yes, whilst I understand that bit, let's say I lost $50 million value, and through the claim on my insurers, I've recovered $20 million, and you have made a part payment, or however you do it, prorate and you give me an additional $10 million. What I'm trying to understand is whether or not the coffee growers whom you were holding the stock for, are they pursuing a claim for that additional $20 million?
Not that I know of.
I don't know. I don't know if I have been somehow a little confused or a little misled. Let me go back to my original. Remember, I think you just clarified something. You said that there was about $1 million that were covered by external persons.
Right.
In other words, of the coffee there, they had $1 million worth of coffee.
They had more than $1 million. The value of the coffee that that entity had was more valued more than $1 million.
How much was it valued at?
Don't have the figures now, but
But a rough idea, because what I'm trying to get an idea of what your potential, what our potential liability is. And if you say to me, when you said to me, well, $1 million is covered, I just figured it was covered. But now I'm hearing that this million US may not be the total amount, A, and B, that it may not have been entirely covered. And I'm saying to you that whatever, if I was a private person and some of my coffee, and my coffee was lost, I would certainly go to my insurers, but whatever I don't cover, I'm coming to you.
The difference, I actually have a figure. It is, in terms of Jamaican dollars, is 69,791,000.
That's what?
69.7.
That's what?
Jamaican dollars.
Is what?
That's the difference. That they were unable to get any coverage for.
So they have told you what they have not gotten?
What happened? We know what they got. We know what the value was.
So basically what that is telling me is that you know what your potential shortfall is because they're coming to you.
Yes.
But that's what we're being asking you from jump, and that's not the position you're being given us up to now.
I think the coffee board is very clear in terms of what the outstanding liabilities are. They have engaged every single dealer that would have had coffee in the warehouse at the time of the incident. And with every single such dealer, payments arrangements have been made over a period. So we are very clear in terms of the extent of the liability right now.
And that's what, all I'm saying to you is that we here at PAAC that have a fiduciary responsibility to look at budgetary issues, what we're been seeking is to ascertain what that liability is.
Well, I don't know if Mr. Willis has a number. He just spoke to us some 69 million.
Yeah, but that's only one section. You have to add that. That's a new part. You have to add that to what?
No, it's not new, Chairman. Let us go again. Let's go again.
All right.
The value of the coffee in the warehouse at the time of the incident was 380-something million? 386 million. Okay. We paid out from the resource of the coffee board 100 million. That would leave 286. Insurance would have covered approximately 1.1 million. So you take that off. US. Okay. And the coffee board has been given credit notes. They have negotiated with each dealer, to the dealer. So payments that would have been made for current cess have been foregone. So that has been reduced. So the coffee board should have a balance now in terms of what is the outstanding exposure as we speak. And as I said, whatever that balance is, and probably Mr. Willis can find it and tell the committee, there are specific arrangements with every dealer in terms of how it will be liquidated over the next 2 years based on future cess payments. Right?
Right, but during that period, given that they're not going to be getting the cess, you're going to have to find increased subventions.
Yeah, and that is why that's how it started. That's how the conversation started. That is why the government put in the budget, in the current budget, it's there, 100 million, and that is what we have been using to help the coffee board, to meet their inescapable expenses because of the cash flow situation that has been occasioned by this insurance debacle.
Okay, so at the end of the day, there's one last thing that I would say. Coming out of this, the policy of the commodities boards, there needs to be some leveling, because just sitting here and listening, I would suspect that if I put coffee with the coffee board and I don't pay any insurance on my coffee because I'm putting it in your hands, I actually have a saving because I'm not paying insurance. Another person is doing insurance because he wants to be doubly, but he has to pay that. Now, at the end of the day, when it passes through, if there are no trauma, no disaster, it just means that my costs are higher than another person. There must be some sort of policy that, look, either the individual producers are going to insure or the coffee board is going to be insuring. There needs to be some set policy that you have a level playing field, because in this case, obviously just listening, there was not a level playing field. But thank God for those that had the insurance, because at least they had coverage.
And as I said, that is what I was alluding to, that going forward, remember now that all the commodities will be brought more or less under the same regime as now obtains for coffee. The, cocoa will come under that regime, under the new JACRA, and spices and so on. The policy is that if JACRA is the agency of government mandated by law to certify and ensure the quality of these products being exported. And if the legal arrangement is that they have to deposit that commodity to be exported in our custody, then JACA would be mandated to ensure that adequate insurance are in place, because the coffee would have left, or the cocoa for that matter, or whatever commodity, would have left the custody of the processor. Exactly. And once it's in our custody, then we have to have that responsibility. Absolutely. And that the cost of that would have to be reflected in the cess or whatever fees that JACA charges. And that is how we're going to go forward.
All right.
Mr. Stanbury, you say that there was underinsurance in relation to the stocks at...
No, Mr. Stanbury. What we had heard is that there was, you had said self-insurance, but Mr. Willis had said that there was insurance in place, but it was grossly underinsured. All right. By default. More by default.
Yeah, yes, sir.
May I just encourage you to have a look back at the policy and perhaps seek the guidance of the Attorney General's Department in construing that particular provision under the policy. Because I believe Mr. Willis may be a little more au fait with the policy, and I believe that there is in fact a policy. And because the information which came out at a time when I believe that the minister intervened is that there was limited coverage. So in fact, there is a policy. And there was some discussion about whether or not it is one figure or the other. So perhaps at this point, because I don't know that the Coffee Industry Board has recovered anything under that policy. And perhaps the time has come for you to seek guidance from the Attorney General's Department, the Commercial Department, which would give you an opinion as to how that particular clause under the policy ought to operate. Because as I understand it, one miserly figure is being considered, whereas what the Coffee Industry Board let out at the time was that they had coverage for in the region of $300 million. But it appears that there are some voices which are saying it is a substantially less figure. So let us have it clarified, please.
Members, I don't know if there are any other questions for the Coffee Board. All right. We have with us sugar, dairy, cocoa, or coconut. Which one is here? I wasn't certain. The coconut. All right. So, members, I turn it over. If there are any other questions to the Commodity Board in general, I remember Paul and I remember Horner said. Yeah, well, let's finish with the Coffee Board.
You can go. I want to ask on coconut.
Yeah.
To the Coffee Industry Board, I would have gone through in the last couple of months a very rough time with my coffee farmers, primarily because of coffee prices. I'd like to understand from the Coffee Industry Board what role you play in assessing whether or not the prices being offered to our farmers locally are in fact reasonable and are in fact manageable, and whether or not you have been able to prove to the coffee farmers what is the optimal or at least break-even point that they need to operate at in order to be sustainable coffee farmers in Jamaica, so that those who are not able to maintain that level of productivity know upfront that the government, if you are not at all involved, does not set coffee prices, And if you can't reach this minimum level of management of your business, you are going to be falling out of the market. And Mr. Stanbury, PS Stanbury can assist if necessary.
Yeah, all right. Well, I will give Mr. Stanbury, PS, we're sort of, huh? We had sort of gone through it, but I don't know if there's
remember,
some pre-sale.
we can the government's role in terms of the Coffee Industry Board is really one, quality assurance and certification, extension, research and development. So we're not directly involved in the setting of coffee prices, but the Coffee Board, through its extension service, can in fact establish what is a sort of a minimum level of productivity that will give the farmers a chance to succeed, having regard to the prevailing prices. And we have a program that was announced by the minister and is being rolled out now. We recognize that even with the depressed prices right now, bad as they are, if the farmers' level of productivity was at a certain point, they would have been able to make money. And that level is not unattainable. And in that regard, we have provided some 80 million to the industry through the Coffee Board to assist the farmers to reach that level because we believe it is attainable.
So, Pierre Stanbury, I'm actually happy you answered the question that way. Now, my next question to you. Who will get that 80 million? Is it the small farmers or the already very productive large farmers?
Where the need is greatest, MP.
Mr. Steinberg, you step aside. You step aside from that one.
Mr. Willis, at the symposium, we would have registered some 500 farmers. Right. What we had done was to ask the Coffee Industry Board to give us an idea, right across all the constituencies, who were the registered farmers, so that if persons were not registered, immediately we knew, and we have now directed them to go to the Coffee Industry Board because those are very often the small farmers. Okay. As a matter of fact, from what we saw, all that came were 99% small farmers. So we would want to make sure that those small farmers are taken into consideration in the productivity incentives being offered. And I really want a fairly direct answer to that question because the farmers are looking to us to respond to them. And they are equally of the view, and they understand it, that the large coffee farmers are at 80 boxes per acre or more, and in their estimation, not necessarily in need of the productivity incentive, while they are at an average 15, 20, no more than 40 bucks per acre, and are desperately in need of that $80 million. So I'd like for the Coffee Industry Board, the government through PS Stanbury, to tell us where will we go with those resources and how do we plan to distribute.
I know the plans are being worked on. I know farmers have been registered, and they're going through the list because there is verification that has to be done. And then it will be taken from there. No, man. It's going to be...
Chairman, as a matter of principle, and when I made that comment, it wasn't facetious to evoke any laughter. It's true. As a matter of principle, our intervention is to help the most vulnerable, those who need the help. So the Coffee Board would have to come to us with a program very soon with specific criteria, and we are targeting those people that have low levels of production. Just to say though, that one would be surprised that some of the so-called bigger farmers have low levels of productivity too. But you see, we divested the thing so that they invest their money. So we're not looking there. Our concern is the smaller guys who we need to pull up.
And in that regard, Mr. Chairman, I think we therefore have to relook at the criteria, because that ceiling of 80 boxes, that will not enable your smaller farmers to benefit.
No, that's what you want.
Yes. Pardon?
None of our small farmers are at 80 boxes
Precisely.
per acre. So if one of the criteria is that you're at 80 boxes per acre, which actually is break even or better, you would be profitable, then most farmers would be able to benefit. Many of the coffee farmers, though, argue that $80 million is not a lot of money based on the fact that there are some over probably as much as 8,000 farmers between RADA and Coffee Industry Board registered as small coffee farmers. So they don't think it is really going to amount to a lot, but they look forward to the assistance. And the time frame as well, Mr. Stanberry, would be good to know, like if we're going to make sure within a month, 2 months, 3 months, that we are able to roll out so they can get a sense as to when they will get some assistance.
Put it this way, MP, the money has already been disbursed to the Coffee Industry Board. I know, and now is the opportune time as people reap that they can, fertilize and cut back and so on. So we expect the program from the Coffee Board, within days or so that we are assured that the program is going as intended.
Well, it would be good to find out from the Coffee Board if they are within days of giving you that program. And second, one of the challenges that you generally have is just not adequate extension officers to carry out what it is that you want to achieve. So you put 80 million inside there trying to get farmers up.
There's another element there now. It's a partnership. The government is not proposing to do everything that needs to be done. We are making a contribution. And critically, and this is the kind of partnership that we want to see develop in the agricultural sector. It's there in some instances. We want to see it strengthened and expanded. The coffee processors who rely on this coffee because they need throughput to make their processing business viable. They have a responsibility, in my view, to work with the coffee farmer who supply them to ensure that they can have that throughput. Because right now, where you have an industry with excess capacity, there's nothing more important than throughput.
Mr. Stanberry, as a coffee farmer myself, you know that doesn't go to be true.
Yeah, but
you know that it doesn't.
Remember, we are changing culture.
I know, but let me.
They have a stake in it too.
No, but let me say, it is the ministry that is putting up, the government of Jamaica that's putting up this $80 million. So it is to your interest to ensure that when you're spending this money, that you get value for it, that the farmer himself. So that's why I bring it. We're the extension officers, especially government extension officers. That, because as I said, we have never had enough out in the field to ensure that when you spend this $80 million, that a man not doing he's doing best practices to get him to that point. And it is spent, because we know that in many instances, even some farmers, when they get the fertilizer and the things, they may up sell it back to another man. You understand? So no, it is a fact out there. We know that, right? So it is just always in just ensuring that we get the value out of the spend.
One more question, P.S. Stanberry, and possibly Mr. Willis, before you go. I toured, I think it was the First Hand facility earlier last week. I saw a new product I'd never seen on the market before, something called a coffeelizer. Are you aware of it? Is it a special product? Because in looking at and discussing the ingredients, it was the first time it would appear to me that a product is being designed for coffee and coffee alone. So are you aware of it any at all? Is it being designed for the ministry? I'm not sure.
I heard of it myself, and I know the people in the technical area as regards agronomy. would have been looking at it as well. I know there have been discussions. I'm really not on that side of the technical competence, but I know Mr. McCook, who should have been here. He knows about it.
That knowing and hearing, though, it is in fact a part of it. A part of this 80 million program and Newport First, well, I don't know if I can call the name here in Parliament, but well, they are the one. But they are formulating a special blend of fertilizer specific to the needs of the coffee plant. The fertilizer will be procured from them, and that will be part of the program. But to address your concerns, which is a serious concern, this program is not just about giving a coffee farmer 2 or 3 bags of fertilizer and some seedlings. A serious component of the program is the extension, the technical advice and the hand-holding. And that is this is a significant part of the program.
And that is what I want to hear. You understand? Because, again, if we come to RADA, a similar thing. More farmers and extension officers than you can manage. Yeah? And we don't really get that we're looking for in the productive side. So I'm happy to hear.
Again, for the record, Mr. Willis, how many extension officers do you have?
We have 10.
10. How many farmers you say there are, MP?
10.
How many farmers you say? So you're working at about 1 in 500?
Actually, they are not really extension officers, but advisory officers. What the program that they carry out is to really train the trainers. So they actually train extension officers that are attached to some of the entities. And also they would have these training sessions so other persons can be trained so they can impart their knowledge to other persons. But that's really...
No. So, yeah, but I think everyone is having the same concern.
Right.
Let's say there's a farm in Flamstead or a farm in East Rural, wherever. The question is, who goes to that farm? Who is the officer? Because we all would figure that the officer is coming from the coffee board. That's our understanding. Are you saying it's not really so?
Yeah, what he's saying, Chairman, is that extension methodology has changed. I mean, we're no longer attempting to go to each individual farmers. Technology and the farmer field school methodology have given us the tool to engage farmers in groups and to train lead farmers who will in turn impart the knowledge to their neighbors. Let me just say this. I'm making one point.
MP.
Mr. Stanberry, I will defend you here, Mr. Stanberry, because I've been the beneficiary of many of those trainings. So though I do have one very weak extension officer, I still have seen the program by RADA, where we have actually announced and advertise, and the extension officers advise the farmers, and they all come down to either the RADA office or down by Ministry of Agriculture, and they come for the training, and it actually has been beneficial. So I defend you here. In terms of in the field, no. In terms of in the field, where the challenge is the difficulty to respond to farmers who are having issues. It is almost impossible for them to be able to get around and identify the problems that affect the farmers and their produce. They almost have to carry it to RADA to come and show what the issues are. So that is where we are at.
All right. I think what we're trying to get at, because we're all on the same wavelength, and what we really want to do is to recognize that if we have a serious problem, how are we going to resolve the problem? And from where we sit, whether we can garner the resources for you and PS where you may need it to ensure that we don't just criticize what's happening, but we enable you to resolve the problem. So I think you have to take it within the context of it. And what we're really seeking now is to get a feeling from you. If you're comfortable, remember the basis of this discussion. You had given us space, an overview. The Member of Parliament came in after and sort of asked the same question within the context of what you said. And at the end of the day, what everyone has gotten to is there are two elements. One is the price, which is a sort of flagship thing. But secondly, is that we need to raise the productivity. And to raise the productivity, we had to look at a whole different methodology of training and getting things in place, etc. So what we're really seeking to ask you, are you convinced that you have the resources and the wherewithal now to be able to lead this thrust to sort of do the training, the reconstruction of the coffee industry so that the farmers can become more productive and actually benefit more out of coffee farming in Jamaica? So that's what we really want to get at. Are you comfortable? When we ask how many extension officers, you have 10. The fact of the matter, if you're comfortable with 10, we're good. But you need to tell us whether you're comfortable with what you have, because at the end of the day, you come back next year, we're going to be here and we're going to hold you accountable for whether or not the process is advancing or not. So that's what we really want to achieve. So again, the question is, and I think all of us, and all of us involved, we just want to know is, given the current state of where we are at, there's a need for a revolution almost. Am I correct? Are you in a position, resource-wise, to lead that change? And that's the ministry and the coffee board.
Chairman, I think that the resources are there, certainly. Well, the 80 million is there. The coffee board has a technical expertise. We're also working with the marketing agents. The farmers have been mobilized at different levels, and I think that they're ready to go. And I think that it is doable. 80 million is not insignificant, and the ministry will monitor to ensure that we get value for money, and we see it ultimately in increased production and productivity. Just to say that I am encouraged, Chairman, that over the last year, despite the challenge, coffee production increased from 5.3 million kilograms to 7.5. That's nearly 20-something% without intervention, and I'm sure with our intervention and holding, we can maintain that trend.
I would caution you, I mean, just looking on, I would caution you that given a lot of persons plant because of expectations. So when the prices were high, a lot of people have gone in and the production is up. So I don't want you to feel that just by training, that trend will continue. There are a lot of people now that looking at the price of what they're getting who are considering walking away and abandoning their farm.
Except, Chairman, we have done other things, you know. We have mentioned it, but we have done other things. Because one of the things that the minister has done is to ensure that we use legislation to create opportunities in the market for coffee. For example, we have just promulgated since the 15th of November an order under the Coffee Industry Board regulations that now make it mandatory that any coffee blended in this country to be consumed here must have a minimum of 20% of Jamaican coffee. That is going to provide a significant fillip, you know, to the industry so that, you know, we have a greater take-up of our coffee. So all of the measures would have to be looked at, you know, as a comprehensive whole.
Did I hear you correctly? You said all that we need to have is 20% of our coffee?
Import any blends that is being done here. Because the truth is that, sorry, we do have importation of coffee to be blended here because our coffee is so expensive, we export it. What we are saying, if coffee is imported to be blended here for local consumption, whether in households or in the hotel sector, it has to have a minimum amount of Jamaican coffee in it to create market for our local coffee.
Should have indicated both being in a position where you're at 20%, almost mandated. He said it very nicely. When would you get to that place? I've seen a cess being implemented. I'm wondering if it was on green beans only or finished beans. I can't remember. So that would have been done, plus the stipulation that in order for it to be considered Jamaican any at all, used here in Jamaica, applying that 20%. I really wish it was more, but 20% I hope is a start, and we will have that start to climb from there. So we are depending, because that will also drive the level of productivity. Yeah, drive the demand and the level of productivity. So really a two-pronged procedure or policy being instituted by the Ministry of Agriculture, which we really hope will see the results.
Chairman, Mr. Stanbury, whilst I appreciate what there is, I'm not going to name anybody here, but there's a new entrant into the market. And I know that particular entrant has a standard. It's international standard, which may not sit well with our minimum requirement. And I sincerely hope that you will not grant any exemption from our position, because I know with these new people entering markets, they tend to want to seek concessions, and I sincerely hope we'll not contemplate.
That is now law, you know, so it's not discretionary. And remember, the restriction is on coffee which is blended here. If you want to import the finished product, then you have to face the cess. And those cess proceeds will go in a fund that will use to expand local coffee, particularly lowland coffee, which the cess is coming to Parliament soon. I don't remember the level.
Just confirm.
It's in the regulations, yes. Jacra.
Confirm if it's on green beans or roasted or finished products, or on both.
The cess is finished products. No.
So if it's on finished products, then the argument is that the 20% requirement will take care of the green bean importation.
So Chairman, I wanted to move on a little from coffee and probably go into coconut, just to go back to Jacra, because the law was passed last March and it is yet to take effect. So we need to understand why the delay, where are the regulations for Jacra, and very importantly, the funding source. Because we are told that all the commodities will bring with them the various cesses that they now are able to attract. And probably you could just spell out for us, we know about coffee, so probably for coconut you might want to highlight where the cess will be applied, what goods, and so on and so forth. Probably you could just give us a full view on that.
Thank you very much. You are correct, member. The JACRA bill was passed in March and sent into by the Governor General. The ministry sent to the CPC from as far back as January this year, even before the bill was passed, the regulation, the draft regulations. We had some delay And I think if we had deposited in January, it should have been ready. But you know, there are all kind of issues at the CPC with workload, etc. However, we are fully engaged with them, and it is our expectation, based on where we are now, and feedback from them to and fro. Our hope is that the minister will be able to take these regulations before the Christmas recess. It's that advanced. In terms of the funding, again, you are correct. The JACA, we don't expect it to be on the council fund. It is going to be funded by fees and cess on commodities that JACA will have to process in terms of the quality assurance function of that entity. The coffee is clear, as you have said. In terms of cocoa, as you know, right now, government is the sole exporter of cocoa by law. The JACRA, when it is fully in operation, we expect soon, will repeal the Cocoa Industry Board Act. And what will be set up under JACRA is a licensing regime akin to what it obtains in coffee, where private individuals can now apply for a license to export cocoa. We expect that to usher in investments, because investors who have an interest in our good fine flavored cocoa have been quite tentative, because they didn't want to come in a situation where they would have to produce and only the government could export. So this deregulation will open up those doors. Under the Coconut Industry Board Act, there is currently a cess on all imports of oil, edible oils, and so on. Those will flow right into the JACA coffers. So we expect, if there is the level of buoyancy in our commodity production and export, that JACA ought to be able to finance itself.
Chairman, in relation to coconut, and the coconut oil in particular, there was a time when it got a bad rap, coconut oil. People were told that it's bad for your heart. Today, it is the opposite, especially cold press. And I am not too sure what is happening now in terms of the production, but I see a tremendous opportunity for the ministry to direct to the board and to train our people to get back into production, especially for that segment of the market now, the healthcare segment, that is now, I find myself taking a tablespoon or two per day, and I'm remembering stuff much better. So I have put off dementia for the time being. No, I am suggesting that here is an excellent opportunity for us, having suffered in the past, to use our coconut now to propel the industry once more.
With you entirely, Chairman, member.
I take it you're taking your tablespoon a day too.
I'm going to use coconut oil.
All right, members.
Oh, yes, there's one other thing. I know that there's an issue in the courts or some threat. Where are we with that, PS?
Members, you know, as part of the arrangements for JACRA, the JACRA will subsume the regulatory functions of the Coconut Industry Board, and the intent is that the commercial aspect will be carried out by the Growers Association, who would eventually form themselves into another entity, either under the Companies Act or as a co-op or whatever the appropriate legal framework. The question arose, if that is going to happen, how would the resources of the board be apportioned? And as you know, that's a discussion that has been going on for a few years now. There is a view from some quarters that those resources belong to the growers. There is also a view that even though the government might not have given the Coconut Industry Board any subvention over the years, but the facilitation provided by the government under the Coconut Industry Board Act for all kind of tax exemptions and that kind of thing, you know, the government has some claims. We have been negotiating. It has reached a point where it became necessary for the government to seek a sort of a declaratory judgment in terms of who those resources really belong to, because we have not been able to come to an agreement. So the Attorney General has been asked to ask the court to make that determination so that we can be clear going forward. Well, the Attorney General has been asked whether or not they have initiated the process. I can't say right now.
Permanent Secretary Stanbury, what's the age of the Cocoa Industry Board? Yes, Coconut Industry Board.
Since 1945, is it? Yeah. 45.
And so we are contemplating all the dead growers. We'd be bringing them back into that whole scheme of arrangement?
Let me say this. Where we stand, and the member, Paulwell, is correct, there's a significant opportunity right now to expand the coconut industry. People are more health conscious. Even for just drinking coconut water is a big thing. So the discussions we have had with the Coconut Industry Board is that in as much as there is a need for the government to have some of those resources, the government is equally keen that on separation of the regulator from the commercial, the government has no interest to say, okay, go on with the commercial and do as you like. There still need to be a framework, and we have been very keen, and we have sat with them and said, we want to see a development plan. How are you going to go forward to exploit all of these opportunities that now exist? And in fairness, a development plan is on the table. And we expect once we have resolved the issue of this division that some of those resources would have to be directed, frankly, to expanding the coconut industry, because, and one of the things that the board has been doing and will continue to do is the whole matter of the seedlings, treating with the diseases and so on. Those are important functions. So we don't want to put this in an acrimonious light. I think a declaratory judgment is just that. It will clear once and for all, so that we can move on.
Still a little bit unsettled. If the claim is on the part of the growers that those funds belong to the growers, are we talking about present growers, or we are going back to 1945 thereabouts, when we, up through the years, and is the state able to identify all of that, all of those growers, and will be able to make a distribution to all of those growers? Because it seems to me that there's a grave error in going down that route, to seek a declaration. And if the court, is the court going to say no? If the court says it belongs to the growers, which growers are we talking about? Is it that the ones which for the last 10 years? And then is a very small group of growers. And then you'd have that significant body of growers. Some of them would have gone to meet their maker. They're no longer part of the pool of persons who are likely to benefit, who would, if it were held, that they are to participate in this scheme. They're no longer with us. It seems a little bit untidy to me, and I'm troubled by this, because as I understand it, you're talking about billions of dollars.
Well, the government is not advancing the position that a distribution is to be made to growers past and present. That's certainly not the government's position. The government's position is that these resources must be directed to the development of an industry for the benefit of this country. And there is scope for development, right? So we are not saying you must go and find every coconut grower that has ever, existed in the past and give them a check. I mean, we have had a lot of discussions, and it has reached that point, put it that way.
All right, members, we have a little issue. Time is upon us. Today the House is sitting at 2, and so we really have to come out at 1 so they can clear. We have covered most of agriculture, but we have not really seen RADA. RADA. Mike.
It is actually eminent and very critical. So as a parting note, last time we did the National Irish Potato Program, the fertilizers came after the potatoes. I am asking, since we have started distributing seeds again, potato seeds, without fertilizer, that we really get on with the program of going with fertilizer at the time of distribution, because as Member Phillips said, and I quite agree with him, I am sure when they receive the fertilizers, the last time, no, they would have just sold them, because the potatoes were already in
the ground. All right, I'm going to make a suggestion, members. What I'm going to say, members, the only thing we would have is RADA. We have to adjourn today. I'm going to suggest I'll have a discussion with the Minister of Finance to see whether the supplementary budget is coming. We would expect in another week or 2 it probably will be here. If not, it will be very early. What I would say is, let us say we will give notice to the Ministry of Agriculture, and seeing as neither of them, we only have a small bit, we can take it if necessary at that time. And so we'll notify you at a further date. To allow us to
just to, because looking through the additional information and what was originally given, the agro parks. Yeah. Can we get some information on? Yeah.
Could you just, what we could do is, it's good to have that information, but just say to the clerk can officially, the member that wants some additional information.
Yes.
All right, members. With that. Thank you, PS, and your ministry. I'm sorry we weren't able to complete everything, but we will be in touch with you. We're almost there. Thank you for coming, members. Thank you, and we will adjourn today and be in touch with the ministry with regard to when we are going to meet again. Thank you, members.
Did you know that in a recent survey done by the OCA in schools across Jamaica, 43% of the students received inappropriate messages from strangers? The OCA wants you to be smart online. Never speak to persons you don't know. Parents, encourage your children to be social but be smart.
This message was brought to you by the Office of the Children's Advocate with support from UNICEF.
There'll be a better tomorrow. 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 There'll be a day. There'll be a way. There'll come a time to sing a brand new song. There'll be a better tomorrow.
News. Current affairs. Business. Sports. Culture and the arts. You're watching PBC Jamaica.
Wednesday, November 29. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the number of delegates in attendance at the United Nations World Tourism Organization Global Conference being held in Montego Bay is a testament to the region's strength in tourism. He delivered the keynote address to a packed Montego Bay Conference Center in St. James yesterday. 1,500 delegates are registered for attendance at the Global Tourism Conference in Montego Bay, St. James. Another 200 are on the waiting list. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says that speaks volume that all the important players in the sector can convene under one roof to discuss the business of tourism.
Prime ministers, ministers, heads of international organizations, along with the cruise and land sectors, airlines, bankers, academia, NGO, among others, are all in one space to focus on the tourism industry. This is truly the right place and the right time to make the right connections and show the effectiveness of strong partnerships.
The Prime Minister told delegates that he believes the dialogue during the conference will positively impact the future of the tourism industry globally.
I'm sure the discussions here have opened minds, deepened understanding, strengthened resolve, created links and partnerships, and ultimately inspire positive action.
Mr. Holness noted that discussions from the recently held 2017 International Monetary Fund High-Level Caribbean Forum pointed to stability, to growth-inducing activities, and how they should be linked to promoting social inclusion and poverty reduction, adding that this conference complements those discussions.
We must pivot our tourism growth strategies in line with the key areas that the United Nations International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development promotes: inclusive and sustainable growth, social inclusiveness, employment and poverty reduction, resource efficiency, environmental protection and climate change, cultural values, diversity and heritage, mutual understanding, peace and security.
General Secretary of the opposition People's National Party, Julian Robinson, says the government needs to urgently rethink the Zozo strategy. He says communities outside of the anti-crime zones of special operations are being left exposed to criminals because police and material resources are being diverted to special zones. He cited St. James, where Mount Salem was declared a special zone in September, as a prime example, and argued that crime is an issue in the entire parish. Mount Salem and Denham Town are the areas declared special zones so far under the Law Reform Zones of Special Operations, Special Security and Community Development Measures Act, which was passed in Parliament earlier this year. The law gives the Prime Minister power, after consulting with the National Security Council, to declare an area a zone of special operations in order to tackle increased crime and volatility in a community. Vendors in downtown Kingston want more police officers on the ground as they and shoppers continue to be plagued by thieves with the approach of the busy commercial Christmas season. According to the vendors, their concern has grown because the thieves carry out their criminal acts in full view of people in the streets and subject their victims to physical violence if they resist being robbed. They're calling for greater police presence, particularly foot patrols in the busy market district. Mayor of Falmouth, Councillor Colin Granger, says no vending will be allowed in the popular Water Square over the holiday season. Instead, the mayor says vendors will be moved to a new designated vending area to ply their wares. He says the municipal corporation wants to reserve the square for pedestrian traffic. He says this will help to ease congestion. The Falmouth mayor says the designated vending areas will have adequate space and security. Meanwhile, there were mixed reactions from some vendors to the new rules, with some complaining that it may affect sales, while others said they support the decision. Miss Jamaica Universe Davina Bennett, who placed second runner-up at the International Miss Universe over the weekend, came home yesterday morning and rubbished the notion that her skin color and her hair resulted in her not walking away with the coveted title. She declared during a welcome home reception at Norman Manley International Airport in Kingston that, quote, "If it was for the afro and my skin, I would not have made it to the top 16 or the top 3 for that matter. It was my dedication and hard work that I put in that got me to where I was," end quote. Bennett explained that she decided to go with the afro to challenge the standards of beauty. Culture Minister Olivia Babsy-Grange, who was at the airport to welcome and congratulate Bennett, noted that her success on the international stage should serve as an inspiration to others.
The entire Jamaica was there with you, Davina. They surrounded you with love and appreciation and admiration. I knew that you would be very successful. I just want you to be an inspiration to other Jamaican women that be natural, because we are natural, beautiful people.
In regional news, St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chastanet is calling for the International Monetary Fund to reclassify monies borrowed by disaster-struck countries. Mr. Chastanet was speaking during a round-table discussion on Monday at the United Nations World Tourism Organization Global Conference in Montego Bay. He said given the impact of Hurricanes Irma and Maria on some Caribbean countries, the region is left with no choice but to spend the funds needed to build resilience. On the issue of marketing the Caribbean as a multiple destination tourism region, Mr. Chastanet believes the Caribbean is not ready. On the forefront of challenges to overcome, air travel cost and data.
To fly from St. Lucia to Martinique, which is 15 miles, is $400 US. Okay, and the reliability of the flight is not there. So I'm just going to say to you, I think that the Caribbean will be an incredible multiple destination, but until we resolve this airlift issue, there really is no multiple destination. And the fact is, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this to you because I know that you are going to agree with this, because you've been on the bandwagon for Asia as a potential market for us. We're only going to genuinely be able to succeed in the Asian market when we do have multiple destinations. So it's something that we do need to get resolved. But again, I just want to go back to what Minister Mott said. If you can't measure it, you can't fix it. So to me, that we're the dependent region on tourism. We don't even do satellite account systems every year. Our statistics are horrible. They're late, they're inaccurate. I mean, here we are in 2017 still measuring the impact of tourism by the number of arrivals. We're not even saying bed nights. We're not even talking about revenue.
St. Lucia's Prime Minister agreed with his colleagues on the push for regional marketing in addition to individual island advertising, but chided that it has all been pure talk so far.
Until we understand what the full potential of tourism is in this region, we're never going to spend the requisite amount of money on marketing. And number two, I've been here since 1991. I think that, Ed, we've probably been involved in about 4 regional marketing campaigns that we've gotten started. And until we agree that we're going to have a permanent source of funding for those marketing campaigns, they're not going to work. So it can't be that you get it going, all of a sudden the numbers go up and everybody doesn't think the need is there anymore, and they stop putting the money in. So once the monies are going to have to come specifically from the countries on an annual basis, they're going to be in competition with local funding. We have said, let us put together a formula that would allow us to collect monies in order to be able to put this specifically into a regional marketing campaign. And unfortunately, Minister, we have all been talk and we've been no action.
The St. Lucia government says it is undertaking a campaign aimed at discontinuing the sale of soft drinks in school compounds. The Ministry of Health and Wellness said the highly sweetened fizzy drink is known to have disastrous effects on health, and that regular consumption of soda is linked to diabetes, heart disease, obesity, asthma, cavities, among other illnesses. Chief Nutritionist Lisa Hunt Mitchell met with school principals to discuss the best way to reduce consumption of soda among the youth, noting that the intention is not to place a hole in the pockets of the local manufacturers, but instead to ensure a healthier nation. In sports, we go to football as Jamaica's under-20 reggae girls have their sights firmly set on the crucial CONCACAF Championship in January. With their commanding performance in the recently concluded final round of the Caribbean Football Union qualifiers in St. Kitts and Nevis, the girls are the only Caribbean team to have qualified for all CONCACAF Women's Under-20 Championships since its inception in 2002. Following up on their easy first-round qualification in Bermuda in July, where they hammered Curacao 10-0 and Bermuda 2-1, the young reggae girls also edged the Dominican Republic and rivals Haiti 1-0 before easing past hosts St. Kitts and Nevis 9-0. Assistant coach Xavier Gilbert had high praises for the team, which also qualified the country for the 2018 Central America and Caribbean Games to be staged in Colombia in July. And that's the news. Do stay with us. The weather report is next. This is PBCJ's weather report. Thanks so much for staying with us. Let's start as usual with our local currents. In Kingston right now, it's just about 29 degrees Celsius, with the sun set to go down at 6:33 p.m. As will the temperature. It will be just about 24 degrees Celsius this evening. Let's take a look over there in Montego Bay, St. James. This afternoon, we're seeing a temperature just about 28 degrees Celsius. We're also seeing a forecast of sunny skies with a bit of a cloudy condition for the afternoon. In the evening, though, Montego Bay, you can look forward to scattered showers in certain areas. The temperature is set to go down to 12 degrees Celsius, as will the sun, at 6:33 p.m. And across the island now for our forecast for the day, we're expecting an average temperature between 28 and 33 degrees Celsius. We're also expecting some cloudy condition across several parishes, and we're seeing a forecast of rainfall for Negril. Tomorrow we can expect an average temperature between 28 and 31 degrees Celsius. We're also expecting scattered showers in the southern end of the island and over there in the west as well. We're expecting some cloudy conditions in the eastern end of the island, but it should be predominantly sunny in Montego Bay and over there in Oterias. In our Caribbean forecast, we're seeing an average temperature between 27 and 29 degrees Celsius forecast for tomorrow. We should also expect some rainfall in the eastern end of the Caribbean. It should be pretty cloudy in the northern end. We're seeing cloudy conditions forecast for Nassau, Bahamas, and over there in Havana, Cuba. It's pretty sunny out for the forecast in Mexico. And in our travel planner, we're looking at the United States. We're looking at Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and Atlanta. We're seeing that there should be some sunny skies in these areas with a minimum temperature showing at -1 degree Celsius and a high at 28 degrees Celsius. And that's it for the weather report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.
I have 5 grandchildren, and for me right now, I would like for them to go up and find and live in this country as a free Jamaica, not have to be looking over their shoulder. A safer Jamaica to me this morning would mean I would wish for the whole country to come back together, to be as one, like it was before. Let's create a safer Jamaica.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
You can accomplish what you will.
Jamaica to the world!
John, the back room had so much old junk and stuff. We must decide whether to throw them out or something. John, a picture when we got married, baby. You were so handsome and I was so pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Hilda.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think I have put on weight since my wedding day?
You didn't look good in the picture, no, Miss Phillips, but you even look better now.
Thank you, Hilda. Peace. John, what are we gonna do with this half bottle of insecticide? Throw it down the sink? John.
All right, Pet, let me see it. What? I don't know what to do with this, you know. Hilda, go get my diary. Telephone diary. I need to call Tony, farmer friend. I don't know what to do with this. Yes, I think it's time that buckle leave this house, sir. Yeah.